So in this video, we're going to do a problem. So we found that we need to use x equals x prime cosine phi minus y prime sine phi, and y equals x prime sine phi plus y prime cosine phi, with phi satisfying cotangent to phi equals a minus c over b. So that's what we found in the other two videos. We derived these formulas. So now we're going to do a problem. So we're going to use rotation of axes to eliminate the xy term in the equation, because we know that this xy term right here is the thing that's giving us grief. That makes us let us know that this is going to be a rotation of axes. And we know that the general form is going to be ax squared plus bxy plus cy squared plus dx plus ey plus f equals 0. So this is a general form. And the whole goal is to get rid of this bxy. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do here is going to be the first step. It's going to be a very, very long problem. So just bear with me and with a whole bunch of algebra. So the first thing that we want to do is find phi. Okay, let's figure out what this angle is going to be. So we know that cotangent of 2 phi is going to be a minus c over b. Okay, well, in this case, our a is going to be this 6 square root of 3. That's our a. That has an x squared term. Minus c. C has a y squared term, and the y squared term is right here, which is a 4 minus square root of 3, divided by b. And in this case, b is going to be the xy term, which in this case is 6. So this is going to give me, on the top part, I'm just going to have 2 square root of 3 divided by 6. And then I can further reduce this to square root of 3 over 3. So I know that cotangent of 2 phi is equal to square root of 3 over 3. So I got to think about where exactly does 2 phi, the cotangent, give me square root of 3 over 3. So 2 phi is going to be equal to, well, that just happens at 60 degrees. Okay, and now all I got to do is divide by 2. So phi is going to be equal to 30 degrees. So that's going to be my rotation of axes, or my angle of rotation, how we call it. So we finally figure out phi, or phi, whatever you want to call it. So now the second part that we want to figure out is what is my x prime and y prime. So I want to have this entire equation that I have up here. So I want to have this thing in terms of x prime and y prime. So I don't want this x and y's. So we know that our equation is going to be, let me make this in black. So this is going to be 6 square root of 3 x squared plus 6 xy plus 4 square root of 3 y squared equals 21 square root of 3. Okay, so now let's first figure out what x and y are. So so now we know that x is going to be equal to x prime cosine phi minus y prime sine phi. And we just figured out what phi is, so we're going to have x prime cosine of 30 degrees minus y prime sine of 30 degrees. And this is just going to give me x prime square root of 3 over 2 minus y prime 1/2. Okay, so that's what we have for our x value. So x is equal to this. So my x equals x prime square root of 3 over 2 minus y prime 1/2. And now what we want to figure out, we want to figure out our y. And we know that y is equal to x prime sine phi plus y prime cosine phi. So plugging this in, we have x prime sine of 30 degrees plus y prime cosine of 30 degrees. And then evaluating this out, we know that x prime sine of 30 degrees is just going to give me 1/2, and cosine of 30 degrees is going to give me square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so we have that y is equal to x prime 1/2 plus y prime square root of 3 over 2. So we have our we found our x and our y's in terms of x prime and y prime. Okay, so now that we have x in terms of x prime and y prime, now comes the crazy part. So we want to plug x and y into the original equation. And this is going to take a lot of bookkeeping. You want to make sure that everything is nice and set, and we don't make algebra mistakes, but we might. So, and one little mistake is probably going to screw everything up. So let's write down the entire equation first. And then what we're going to do is that we are going to plug in everything for x and y. So here we go. So we're going to have 6 square root of 3 times x. X in this case is x prime square root of 3 over 2 minus y prime times 1/2 whole quantity squared plus 6. X is going to be x prime square root of 3 over 2 minus y prime 1/2. And then the y value is going to be x prime 1/2 plus y prime square root of 3 over 2 plus 4 square root of 3 times our y, which is x prime 1/2 plus y prime square root of 3 over 2 squared. And this equals 21 square root of 3. Okay, and now comes the crazy part where we have to FOIL everything out. So we're going to FOIL everything. So this is the thing that we're going to FOIL out. We're going to FOIL out this part, and we're going to FOIL out this part. So it's going to be a big mess. So what we're going to get is 6 square root of 3. Okay, this is going to be x prime squared times 3 over 4 minus 2x prime y prime square root of 3 over 4 plus y prime whole quantity squared times 1/4. So that's that. So 6 times all of this part, which is going to be x prime squared square root of 3 over 4. This is going to be plus x prime y prime 3/4 minus x prime y prime 1/4. This is going to be minus, I'm going to write it over here because I'm running out of room, minus y prime squared square root of 3 over 4 plus, now we're going to deal with the 4 square root of 3. So 4 square root of 3, x prime whole quantity squared over 4 plus 2x prime y prime square root of 3 over 4 plus y prime squared over 4 times 3 equals 21 square root of 3. Okay. Now what we got to do is distribute this coefficient inside and also to the other ones. So what are we going to get? It's going to be a big mess. 9 square root of 3 over 2 x prime squared minus 9 x prime y prime plus 3 square root of 3 over 2 y prime squared plus 3 square root of 3 over 2 x prime whole quantity squared plus 9/2 x prime y prime minus 3/2 x prime y prime minus 3 over 2 square root of 3 y prime squared plus square root of 3 x prime squared plus 6 x prime y prime plus 3 square root of 3 y prime squared equals 21 square root of 3. Okay, now the first thing to notice after everything is finally kind of FOILed out, we want to look at the xy terms to make sure that everything cancels out. So here's another xy term, another xy term, and I think that's it for the xy terms. So we have those 3. And if you notice, they actually do cancel out. So all of these things, oh, I have another one. All of these are just going to cancel out. So this cancels out. You can add it, and you can see that they actually will. Now let's group the x prime square. So we have an x prime square here. We have another x prime square here, and we have another x prime squared here. Okay, so now that I have these 3, I'm gonna add them all together, and what I'm gonna get is 7 square root of 3 x prime squared. Okay, and now all we just need is the y prime squared. So here is the y prime. Here's another y prime squared. Here's another y prime squared. And this is going to give me plus 3 square root of 3 y prime squared. And all this equals 21 over square root, 21 square root of 3. So now all we got to do is just divide the 21 square root of 3. So 21 square root of 3. This is going to go away. So all I'm left with is just x prime squared over 3 plus y prime squared over 7 equals 1. So that was a lot of work for this. But this is important because this is just the equation that we wanted. The xy term went away, and all we have is this equation of the ellipse. So this is just the equation of this ellipse. And now here on the x direction, you are going to be going square root of 3 units. On the y direction, you're going to be going square root of 7 units. So now we can finally graph it. We found the equation, and now we want to graph it. So we know that this was the xy plane. We don't want to graph this thing because this thing is horrific to graph. So we rotated the axes 30 degrees because that was our phi. So this is going to be 30 degrees being rotated. So I'm going to use it. So this is going to be x and y. And I'm going to rotate this 30 degrees. So 30 degrees is around here. Okay. So I rotated this 30 degrees, so this is going to be my new x prime y prime plane. So in the x direction, I'm going square root of 3 units. So let's say this is square root of 3. This is going to be negative square root of 3. And then I'm going square root of 7 units. So let's say this is square root of 7. This is going to be minus square root of 7. And this is going to be my graph of the ellipse, rotated. So notice that you have the angle of rotation, which is 30 degrees. You rotate it around this plane, and this is my equation. So it's a lot of work. We have computers now that are able to do this for us, but it's really nice to know what exactly is a computer doing when you're doing these types of problems. But that's basically all there is to it. It's a lot of work, but this is basically what rotation of the axis is.